everyone, thank you for being here today. Our presentation is titled Threads of Resistance Haida Women Reviving Chilkat and Ravenstyle Weaving, presented by myself, Prakruti, Madison, and Khushleen. For generations, Haida weaving has been more than just an art form. It has been a sacred way to tell stories, preserve cultural identity, and honor ancestral traditions. Among the most important of these are Chilkat and Ravenstyle weavings. Known for their intricate detail and deep symbolism, these textiles were historically used to make robes, blankets, and regalia for special ceremonies. However, during colonization, these sacred practices were disrupted, and much of the knowledge surrounding them was nearly lost. But despite that, Haida women have remained dedicated to reviving and adapting their weaving traditions. Through teaching, learning, and artistic innovation, they're preserving more than just fabric, they're preserving a cultural lifeline. This presentation explores the history, challenges, and resilience woven into every thread of Chilkat and Ravenstyle traditions. Chilkat and Ravenstyle weaving are practiced by the Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian peoples. These traditions have been passed down through many generations, not only for their visual beauty, but because they carry identity, stories, and teachings that connect people to their land and ancestors. These weaving styles remain an important and powerful expression of indigenous heritage to this day. They aren't just textiles, they are visual languages that speak across time. Traditional roles and meaning. Chilkat weaving. Chilkat weaving originates from the Tlingit people in Klukwan, Alaska, and was documented extensively by Emmons in 1991. The most recognized piece of this style is the Chilkat blanket or robe, which is worn by high ranking individuals during ceremonies such as potlatches, funerals, and traditional dances. Chilkat weaving is unique because of its finger twining technique that allows the creation of curved, flowing designs, something that's not typically possible with standard loom weaving. These designs often represent clan crests and ancestral figures, making each robe a sacred symbolic item. What's especially impressive is the time it takes over a year to complete just one robe. Here in figure 1, you see a Chilkat blanket featuring a bear design woven by Jenny Thunot, who is a legendary Tlingit weaver. The robe is housed in the Haynes Sheldon Museum, and the bear motif reflects clan identity and lineage stories. Traditional roles and meaning. Ravenstyle weaving. Ravenstyle weaving actually predates Chilkat weaving. According to the American Art Museum, it is characterized by sharp, geometric patterns and uses black, blue, white, and yellow yarns. The technique is also twining, but the designs are more linear and abstract. Traditionally, Ravenstyle robes were made with mountain goat wool and were worn in ceremonies much like Chilkat robes. However, the practice almost disappeared until it was revived by dedicated indigenous weavers in recent decades. Figure 2 here shows a stunning example of a Ripples in the Sky robe, which is a Ravenstyle ceremonial robe woven by Haida artist Evelyn Vanderhoop. This piece beautifully captures the style's bold geometry and spiritual meaning, and it lives on display at the Canadian Museum of History. Symbolism and patterns. Both Chilkat and Ravenstyle weavings are rich with cultural and storytelling symbolism. Chilkat weaving tends to use curved, flowing designs that represent animals, spirit figures, and people connected to clan identity and oral traditions, as Emmons noted. Each design carries meaning that can only be fully understood within its cultural context. Ravenstyle, in contrast, focuses on geometric patterns, more abstract but still deeply meaningful. These shapes they speak to balance, movement, and spiritual energy. In figure 3, we see a modern artistic interpretation called Ravenstyle Lightning Variation, Classic Petites, Earrings by Lily Hope. Made from merino wool, silver ear wires, and commercial dyes, these earrings show how the traditions are being adapted today while maintaining their cultural roots. The role of women as knowledge keepers, Clarissa Rizzle. Indigenous women have always been central to the survival of these weaving traditions. One incredible figure is Clarissa Rizzle, a Tlingit artist who played a vital role in revitalizing both Chilkat and Ravenstyle weaving. She was trained by master weaver Jenny Thunot and later became a teacher and mentor herself. Through her efforts, she ensured that this knowledge did not end with her generation. Figure 4 shows Clarissa Rizzle wearing a chilkat robe made from mountain goat wool and cedar bark. The patterns on her robe reflect Tlingit storytelling, and the oceanic backdrop in the image emphasizes the deep connection to the land and nature. The role of women as knowledge keepers, Lily Hope and Ursula Hudson. Clarissa's legacy lives on through her daughters, Lily Hope and Ursula Hudson, who are both active weavers and cultural educators. They have not only continued weaving, but have also expanded its reach through workshops and mentorship programs. They teach both indigenous and non indigenous students, helping pass down these sacred practices while making space for cultural learning and appreciation. In Figure 5, we see Lily Hope at the loom, weaving a raven's tail robe. Her posture and focus reflects the discipline, devotion, and pride that goes into maintaining and evolving these traditions.
Hello everyone, my name is Madison and I will be talking about the impacts of colonialism on traditional Haida weavings. So following Prakruti's information on the origins and historical significance of Chilkat and Ravenstail weaving, we now shift to the focus of colonialism and the ways it profoundly impacted indigenous cultures, particularly the Haida people's traditional art forms such as Chilkat and Ravenstail weaving. Before colonial intervention, Haida women played a pivotal role in the creation of Chilkat and Ravenstail weavings, which held deep cultural and ceremonial significance. Before colonialism, Chilkat and Ravenstail weaving were highly esteemed art forms among the Haida and other Northwest Coast indigenous nations, serving as powerful expressions of identity, status, and cultural knowledge. These intricate textiles were traditionally created by women and often depicted complex crest designs, clan histories, and spiritual motifs. Worn as robes in ceremonies, potlatches, and dances, these weavings held deep cultural and social significance, visually representing the interconnectedness of the Haida people with their land, ancestors, and traditions. The knowledge of weaving was passed down through generations, with master weavers mentoring apprentices in a process that reinforced both artistic skills and cultural teachings. The time-intensive nature of Chilkat and Ravenstail weaving reflected the deep respect and patience required for the craft. Before colonial disruption, these weavings were not merely decorative, they were living narratives, symbols of wealth and prestige, and integral to the social fabric of Haida society. The arrival of European settlers and the subsequent establishment of colonial policies had a devastating effect on Haida weaving traditions. The introduction of foreign diseases, displacement from ancestral lands, and the imposition of residential schools disrupted the transmission of cultural knowledge and skills. Traditional materials such as mountain goat wool became scarce due to hunting restrictions and loss of access to natural resources. This scarcity led to the adoption of alternative materials like sheep's wool, which, while accessible, lacked the cultural significance and quality of traditional fibers. The establishment of residential schools especially exacerbated the decline of weaving traditions. These institutions enforced assimilation policies, suppressing indigenous languages, customs, and arts. Haida children were prohibited from practicing their cultural traditions, including weaving, resulting in a generational gap in their cultural knowledge and skills. The trauma inflicted by these schools disrupted the cultural continuity essential for the preservation of traditional arts. And now we will be moving on to the traditional Haida weavings following colonialism. In doing some research, I came across the paper from the Textile Society of America called An Uncommon Ammunition Case, Interpreting Transitional Textiles in Social Worlds in 19th Century Tlingit, Alaska by Laura J. Allen. This paper provides valuable insights that directly align with the themes in our project, particularly an exploration of the effects of colonialism on Chilkat and Ravenstail weaving. It highlights how these intricate weaving traditions, once central to Haida cultural expression, were deeply disrupted by colonial policies that sought to assimilate indigenous peoples. The author states their research question, scholars generally interpret transitional pieces as evidence of a linear shift from one dominant style to another. I began the study curious whether this ammunition case, which has been published on very little, was by this definition a transitional weaving. She also mentions her observation, as I researched the visual, historical, and cultural significance of this pouch, it soon became clear that this object does not represent a stylistic and technical evolution from geometric to figural. Instead, I suggest that this case's use, construction, and motifs attest to major artistic and social transitions as well as continuities occurring within Tlingit communities during the 19th century. These quotes indicate that the shifts in weaving techniques, materials, and designs were not a natural evolution of art, but a direct consequence of colonial influence and disruption. Rather than a simple evolution of style, this paper suggests how Western economic and social structures devalued indigenous art forms, forcing many Haida weavers to adapt their craft for survival. This transition was not just stylistic, but deeply tied to the struggle of indigenous communities to maintain their cultural identity amidst systemic oppression. The shifts in Chilkat and Ravenstail weaving reflect a broader narrative of resilience as Haida women navigated colonial pressures while finding ways to preserve and reclaim their artistic traditions. Despite these challenges, this paper also illustrates the resilience of Haida women who have worked to reclaim and revive their weaving traditions, a central theme in our presentation. The text discusses the efforts of contemporary Indigenous artists who, through cultural revitalization initiatives and mentorship programs, are ensuring that the knowledge of the Chilkat and Ravenstail weaving is preserved for future generations. These weavers not only restore a lost artistic practice, but also use their work as a form of resistance against ongoing colonial narratives that have sought to erase Indigenous identities. By situating weaving within a framework of cultural survival and resistance, the paper reinforces the idea that Haida women are not only reviving a tradition, they are actively reclaiming their history, reinforcing their sovereignty, and challenging colonial legacies. We engage with these same themes, emphasizing the power of Indigenous women's artistry as both a historical and contemporary act of defiance against colonial erasure. Ultimately, the legacy of colonialism has left an indelible mark on Haida weaving traditions, disrupting the transmission of cultural knowledge and access to traditional materials. However, the resilience of Haida women has been evident in the ongoing efforts to revive and sustain these art forms, ensuring that the Chilkat and Ravenstail weaving continue to be vital expressions of Haida identity and cultural heritage.
Hello, my name is Khushleen, and now building on the topics presented by Madison, we shift our focus to the contemporary revitalization of Chilkat and Ravenstail weaving, examining the commendable ways in which Haida women today reclaim their artistic and cultural traditions. Indigenous weavers have maintained these detailed forms of art and expression and have redefined them to assert Haida identity, challenge colonial narratives, and foster cultural revitalization. Elders and master weavers play a crucial role in contemporary revitalization as they transmit the Chilkat and Ravenstail weaving skills to younger generations today. They accomplish this through formal and informal apprenticeships, workshops, and cultural programs. Evelyn Vanderhoop is a female artist from the Haida Nation and one strong example of this. Widely acclaimed for her outstanding expertise, she is a master in crafting the chief's robe of the Haida people, using the detailed methods of Chilkat and Ravenstail weaving. Through holding workshops and demonstrations in galleries and museums, she is very committed to keeping this tradition alive and teaches others her traditional weaving skills and techniques, ensuring that the skills are preserved, transmitted to younger generations, and never forgotten. Hence, students can master the skills and also become guardians of cultural traditions, carrying them on for as long as they live, contributing to the revitalization of Chilkat and Ravenstail weaving. Female Haida weavers like Vanderhoop not only teach others their weaving skills, but also ensure its cultural, traditional, and spiritual significance is recognized, acknowledged, and understood. The diverse and intriguing patterns presented in Chilkat and Ravenstail weaving symbolize clan histories, spiritual morals and values, and rich historical knowledge. Through these efforts, Haida women strengthen their ties to their ancestors while also breathing new life into ancestral traditions, thus ensuring revitalization of Chilkat and Ravenstail weaving. Furthermore, the efforts of these Haida women directly ties to the article titled Traditional Crafting as a Catalyst for Indigenous Women's Intergenerational Cohesion and Wellness, A Canadian Perspective by Beat Sedora, Luana Listener, Janice Kung, Sue Ross, and Cora Voyager. The article highlights that crafting activities, including weaving practices, immensely strengthen community connectedness, Indigenous identity, and individual well-being. It is clear that involvement in these activities fosters cultural pride and hugely contributes to positively healing from historical trauma, as the article states. For Indigenous people, engaging in craft is intimately connected with cultural identity and tradition, and thus is a powerful way of expressing emotions and resilience. The article reinforces that crafting activities promote mental and spiritual well-being, with participants feeling greater self-worth, satisfaction, and community belonging. Therefore, it is evident that Chilkat and Ravenstail weaving can immensely help Indigenous peoples of all ages not only better their mental health, but also reconnect with their culture and ancestors, ensuring the continuity and revitalization of their culture and this traditional weaving method. Additionally, transcending beyond just cultural preservation, Chilkat and Ravenstail weaving convey powerful political expressions. Haida women utilize their weavings to publicly resist colonial oppression. Evelyn Vanderhoop's daughter is also an artist and emphasizes that Chilkat and Ravenstail weaving practices are essential to potlatches and thus aid in acts of political expressions, as she states in her webpage. For me, creating these weavings is personally and culturally significant because it contributes to the cultural revitalization and decolonization of the Haida. The Canadian government once outlawed the potlatch as an effort to dismantle economic systems and governance of the Indigenous peoples of the Northwest Coast, which included the Haida. The artist continuously challenges colonial suppression through weaving Ravenstail and Chilkat-style Haida regalia, stating in her webpage, "The regalia that I create is worn by performers who dance, sing, and drum at potlatches and other Indigenous celebrations. A potlatch is, to the Haida people, at the heart of the Haida political and economic systems." Through this, the artist visually asserts Haida resilience and identity. The regalia are living expressions of resistance, expressing the same symbols of power, wealth, status, and Indigenous identity that they held prior to colonial disruption. The artist revives these vital meanings and reclaims the potlatch tradition and the social structures it reaffirms, which colonialism once tried to destroy. As an act of cultural revitalization, she strengthens the future of Haida culture by presenting Chilkat and Ravenstail weavings as a current and evolving tradition that is very much alive and thriving. Moreover, another key aspect of revitalization includes how Haida women have modified their traditional weaving methods. Modern-day weavers have innovatively begun using different and newer materials to guarantee the survival of their art. Specifically, the shortage of mountain goat wool has led weavers to use different fibers like merino wool while still upholding traditional methods. Through adapting to changes, it is evident how incredibly hard Haida women continue to work and dedicate themselves to keeping their weaving methods alive. Additionally, many of these women shared their beautiful Chilkat and Ravenstail weavings through various social media platforms, expressing their art and traditions and educating a global audience about them, proudly showcasing and revitalizing their culture through the power of social media. All in all, through art, education, and activism, Haida women ensure that Chilkat and Ravenstail weaving forever remains a thriving, recognized, and celebrated tradition. In finality, Chilkat and Ravenstail weavings extend beyond just simple art forms. These weavings symbolize cultural survival, strength, and resistance. Despite the challenging impacts of colonialism, Haida women have passionately worked hard to revitalize these traditional weavings, transmitting their artistic knowledge to young generations and thus educating many others. Through mentorship, adaptation, and creative expression, they honor their ancestors and courageously affirm their Indigenous identity, culture, and sovereignty. The ongoing practice of these weaving techniques ensures the strength of Haida culture, allowing it to beautifully flourish while preserving a deep connection to its rich history. And these are all the citations for the sources that we used within our presentation. And that's everything. Thank you so much for listening.